Good morning, evening, afternoon to wherever you are in the world. And today we're back with episode 3 of Author's Purpose. Okay, and today I'm going to be interviewing the author of Top and Tail because I absolutely love that book. So could you please tell us about yourself?
Right, hi, thanks very much for having me. I'm Ali. I'm a Scottish author on Wattpad, and if you know me from Wattpad, you probably know me from my teen fiction book Top and Tail. Other than that, I've also written a couple of sci-fi things, 800 Hours, and I mostly write contemporary adult fiction now. But yeah, I've been on Wattpad for about 10 years now. I think I'm coming up for my 10th anniversary on this account. So there's quite a lot of writing, and it's of varied quality and written at different ages. So
Congratulations. 10 years is a
thank
long
you.
time.
I know it's frightening.
Yes, it is. Okay. So I always ask everyone this question because I'm quite curious. Why did you decide to come onto the podcast today?
Well, when you told me about, I mean, you told me about this after I'd already agreed, obviously, but your motivations for starting the podcast, I completely agree with them. I think that with the advent of the internet and sites like Wattpad and things like that, you normal people who maybe wouldn't have a chance to tell their story through publishing in a traditional sense are able to get their books out there, connect with other readers, and I think it's really cool to chat about that, normalize it, get people to realize that there's an incredible amount of stuff out there that you can access for free, and it's such a good way to like build your skills as an author. I've met some fantastic writers myself who've been able to mentor me and help me along my writing journey and meet people from all over the world. So yeah, I'd like more people to get involved. Come join us.
Mhm. I totally agree. I don't know if I ever said this in a podcast episode before, but the main reason I really wanted to start this podcast because I am, believe it or not, a very busy person, and it's kind of hard to fit this into my schedule. But I'm going to be more consistent from now on. But it's I really wanted to show that even if the book is free, it still can be good because I feel like it's a negative stigma against authors that publish on Wattpad and Inkitt and other sites like that because I just feel like when you think of a Wattpad book, you don't think of a a successful all the right places, they both die at the end, how to build uh what was the other novel I read? Save the Cat. You don't think of those type of novels. You think of fanfics or terrible trashy novels. But I really wanted to show that it's a lot of good authors on here, like um, like the author of Top and Tail or um, Nicholas, the author of Heartbeat. Like I really love their books, and I really want the world to know how good it is. Um, but the next question I really wanted to ask you was, what was your main inspiration slash inspirations for Top and Tail?
So for Top and Tail specifically, I it's not autobiographical, but there's a lot in it that was very similar to what I was dealing with in my life at the time. So for example, Linda's story arc, Jay's mum who's diagnosed with lung cancer. Um, Spoiler if you've not read it,
Yes.
but I think that's in the first chapter. Um, I Someone in my family was diagnosed with lung cancer at the same time, and which is why I started the book. And at the time, I was 14, and I had never really dealt with death before. I had never known anyone who'd been close to me who had died. So writing Top and Tail, I think, felt like a good way to confront those feelings and work out how confusing and difficult it was. And doing it through the eyes of another character, it can sometimes feel like a safe way to work things out because it's slightly distanced from yourself.
Mhm,
Other stuff that I was going through as well was uh, questioning my sexuality. I think that's probably quite obvious going through the book.
mhm,
And you know, um, I was raised Catholic and I went to a Catholic school, and I was really struggling to reconcile, the faith with my emergent, feelings about my sexuality, and with the fact that someone that I've known and loved and who, in my mind, had done everything right had ended up with cancer. So it's just a way of working through all of that, I think.
Mhm. And I completely empathize with you. Like, I really feel that on an emotional level because I'm a writer. I write books. Hello. My first book, well, not my first book, my first book that I want to share with the world is going to be published later this year. And
Oh, how exciting.
it's called Built for Pain. And it's a book about, it's like, I feel like even though subconsciously and consciously, I integrate bits of my life and things that I have gone through, even though, like, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I've never been kidnapped and I never had to go through certain things the characters went through. But, like, on an emotional level, it is, yeah, I definitely, like, use writing as a mask and as a coping mechanism. And I just want to draw that back to the first episode because the author of The Undergrounder, she literally said that writing is very therapeutic for authors and how we often use that as a not disguise, but as a way to show the world a different perspective because you only get to see one perspective throughout this world. You only can see yourself, but we use writing as a way to tell everybody our story. And then from the second episode from Nicholas, um, he even talks about how sometimes he's kind of scared when he puts out a new book, because he it makes him feel vulnerable because he puts a lot of his own emotions and experiences in the book that it he feels like he's exposing himself, and I totally feel that, and I feel like it's just a really cool thing that most authors can get that in their book because it's not easy opening up about experiences. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. I think
Mm,
that's, writing can be cathartic because, as you say, it's not
mm,
easy to open up. Sometimes it's easier to work that into your book, and it's a way of exploring the
mhm,
feelings and the possibilities, but without necessarily, as you say, experiencing it yourself.
mhm. And then sometimes we use writing as a way to not necessarily regret, but see what we would have done differently if we did this and this, or if this experience happened to us again. How could we grow from that? But on a weird side note that just crossed my mind, um, I think I actually mentioned you in my book. I know I mentioned some authors in my book because I it's some books that really have resonated with me, and I know that this book has resonated with me. But you know how you have your little in one of the beginning chapters, they go to the park and it's Allie was here. I think I have that
Oh,
in my
Easter
book.
egg. Oh, do
Mhm.
you?
I think I have
Oh
that in
gosh,
my
I'm gonna
book.
need to look out for it.
Mhm. I'm pretty sure I have that in my book as well because it's just this book it really resonated with me because the characters and the experiences it felt real for me, at least. Like it felt like I really was sitting there as an not omnipotent, but as a viewer or a god, just looking down on the world and watching these two teenage boys' story. um, the next question I want to ask you is more of a general question, and it's like, what is your writing process? Like, how do you write?
Top and Tail's actually a kind of funny one because it's the book that made me realise that I'm a plotter. So before I wrote Top and Tail, I was very much a wing it writer. I would just sit down, batter something out. And as I was writing Top and Tail, I started to realise that there was too much going on to do that anymore. So I think after you know how the scene in when they have their first PE class
I
and you've
wrote.
got they go play football and it's like loose and it's a bit of a confrontation. After that, I kind of realised, oh gosh, I'm actually going to need to plan everything out in advance. So what I started doing was working out what needed to happen, and then I'll try and make a timeline of all the events that I want. From that, I build up dialogue. Because I always find dialogue much easier to write than everything else. So I write first like a wee script and then I come back and fill in all the details after.
For me, that I don't think I could. I'm definitely going to one day try and collect authors um authors' way of writing and try that one day because for me, your writing that sounds really difficult for me. I'm a plotter. I know I'm a plotter. But I'm a plotter and a planster. Because
Mm,
I plot what I know is going to happen. So I know what the beginning of the book, the end, and the middle are going to happen, and I know what's going to happen in each individual chapter.
yeah,
But I don't know how I get there. I just write it. Like I don't necessarily know like, oh, he's gonna this is gonna lead into this and this is gonna lead into this. Like I know the general beats, but I don't know very specific beats. And I feel like that we have that in common. But the actual dialogue part, my dialogue is terrible in my first drafts. I Dialogue is one of my weakest points in writing because I I love dialogue because I feel like you can express the character in dialogue in ways that you can't when you're actually like just reading the
absolutely.
text. Like, cause like if the famous one is "I'm fine" and they're really not fine. But for
Yeah,
me, I'm I'm a person that I experience my emotions. I don't never hide them. So if I'm feeling something, it's always expressed through my words and my body language and anything that I'm doing. So I find it quite hard writing characters that are more emotionally recluse because I'm not that type of person. So I find it like, what will they say if they want to express something, but they're not going to express this whole thing? Because if it was me, I would just be like, I'm feeling sad because you did this. But I know not a lot of people are like that. So it's very hard for me to write dialogue.
part of the what you're talking about there, you're trying not to write yourself and what you would do, but what the character would do. Top and Tail was one of the first books that I really consciously wrote a main character who was quite different from me.
Mhm,
So working out, Ash quite often says one thing and then means another. He'll tell Jay to fuck off, but actually he
mhm,
wants him to stay. It's so working out the dialogue beforehand really helped me kind of get a sense for what Ash's personality was like and the kind of things that he would say out loud and the kind
mhm,
of things that he would maybe keep to himself or maybe share with the narrator but not with the other characters.
mhm. Yeah, for me, I what I have to do to get better and to make my dialogue actually really good, I have to literally have these have playlists for the characters. Well, not for the characters, but for the book and like
Oh, for
each.
the mood.
Hmm. And I have to literally like select like 20 songs that remind me of that character, and I'm that character for them 20 songs. So that really helps.
Cool.
Right? Mm. I don't know why that works for me, but that's what works. So,
I had a Top and Tail playlist as well.
mhm. I love
Did
when
the
the
same.
author, just on a side note, puts their playlist because I definitely listen to it, and I find that it gives the book a whole different level of depth because like when you be like what reading the chapters and they have that playlist and you like and they talking about how the wind is doing this and then in the song the wind is doing something or the echoes, it just makes the book like, oh my god, it makes me emotional. I'm a highly emotional person. So
I
what
think
is go ahead.
sorry, go on.
um what is your writing strength and your writing weakness?
I think one of my strengths is probably dialogue. I think because I spend a lot of time on it, and it's one of the things that I do first.
Hmm.
And I actually say all the dialogue out loud to make sure that it sounds like a real person would say it.
Hmm.
Because sometimes you write something and then you say it out loud and you're like, oh, that doesn't actually
Yeah, like,
flow in real life.
like who would say that?
Yeah, literally, the amount of times I've went back to dialogue and been like, why on earth would a real person speak like that?
Hmm.
But I think because I spend a lot of time on it, I enjoy it. I hope that that's one of the things that people like about my books. It's certainly one of the things I get a lot of comments on.
Hmm. Mm,
Weaknesses, I
mhm,
think all of my books are quite character driven, and all the plots tend to be character driven as well. It's all
mhm,
about, the emotional finale is a
mhm,
moment of emotional payoff rather than a moment of we've solved X plot,
mm,
or we've done the figured out the riddle, etc. Stuff like that. So I think I would like to get more into plot driven writing. as
Mm-hmm.
well, so that I could have a bit more substance into the book as well, rather than just all character all the time.
I'm a very dynamic reader. I read everything, but
Yeah.
literally, um, send me your book. Anybody, anybody that's listening, I would love to read your book. But for me, my weakness is dialogue because, like I said, emotional person. So writing recluse characters, that is, that's one of the challenging things for me. But what I do is I have this little software that reads me my book, and it really helps me because even though I know that I would express emotion this way, I also know like this character he doesn't do this. So by listening to like not necessarily somebody else, but the computer say it, it helps me like guide. He wouldn't say this. This is more of something I would say, or yeah, he would say this. And then for weakness, not a weakness, for strength, for me would actually be. I feel like my strength is little details that you think mean nothing, but mean a whole lot later on in the plot. I feel like that's a particular strength for me because ever since I was a kid, I've been writing and writing and writing. Yes, I write literally almost every day. And I have an interconnected universe. So, and each book build off the next one, and it all means something. So I knew this since I was like 10. I've been wanting to write since I was like 9 or 10, and I knew I wanted to have an interconnected book universe since like 9 or 10. So I have these little details, these little sprouts, these little character flaws that you like, okay, that's just how they are. But like it'll mean something totally different in the next book. Like it make the whole problem worse and things like that. And then I also feel like I'm particularly good at like when I say not minority, when I say minute details, I also mean like dropping hints at things because I know my upcoming novel, Built for Pain, has little details and little hints and little things that you just like. Once you catch them, you just feel like, wow, this book has something else going on that I'm just not seeing on the surface. I'm just seeing it on the surface. So I feel like I'm good at that.
Nice. I love that. I love when you can reread a book and you can go back and see like the little breadcrumbs that the author's left,
hmm
and you're like, ah, I see how
hmm
that came in.
Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's why he did that. Like, okay,
Yeah,
I really love that
it's so
too.
satisfying.
hmm Um, Okay, so this is a very interesting question that I just randomly came up with, and like I was just like what should I ask her? What do I want to ask her? And this was a question that I wanted to ask you. So it is: at what point do you think someone can call themselves an author or a writer?
Oh, this is a tough one. I think so. Give me a second to think. I think calling yourself a writer, particularly now, with the internet and all the rise of different types of writers that we've got screenwriters, copywriters, technical writers, writers in the traditional sense, like authors.
Mm-hmm,
Saying that you're a writer can have so many different meanings and connotations.
mm-hmm,
I think, to be honest, even now, if someone asks me about myself, I don't normally lead with I'm a writer. I
mm-hmm,
would normally say I like to write.
mm-hmm,
But if someone asks, are you a writer? I would probably say yes. I
mm-hmm,
think, once if you sit down and you get words on the page, that makes you a writer. I don't think there's a professional mark, like when you start making money or when you sign to a publishing house or whatever. Maybe to say that you're an author is a career, a different story, but to call yourself a writer, I think you just need to be someone who writes.
mm-hmm. I actually really agree with you because um, the thing that I think is uh, the point where you can say that you're a writer is when you literally write something. It doesn't have to be I finished a book or I finished a page or I completed NaNoWriMo or I did this. It's just when you put your words onto the paper, whether that be for academic purposes or self indulgence. Like when you put the words on the paper, you're a writer. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I think that's why places like Wattpad are so good because there's a lot of people who are writers that never share their work with anyone, and
Mhm,
there's loads of amazing undiscovered works out there that are just sitting in people's notebooks or hard drives.
mhm,
When you've got a place like Wattpad, you can just put it up and anyone can read it. It's
mhm,
so cool.
mhm. I really, yep, I like that. Let's see. Okay, so I want to know specifically, how do you develop your plotting characters?
So for the character, I normally have a rough idea of the plot and a rough idea of the character. Uh, bef- I don't do one completely before the other. I think it's impossible because you never know how your character is going to affect your plot. And you know
Mhm,
how sometimes when you develop the character, they end up taking on like a personality or a trait that you didn't anticipate at the start,
mhm,
and you have to write around it.
mhm,
So normally for the characters, I'll sit down and I have a template where I'll work out their backstory, what they look like, what their quirks are,
mhm,
um, and I also have like little note cards where I go into every character's relationship with every other character in the book. It's like a horrible spider web. It looks really unorganized, but I know where everything is.
mhm.
So that's a good thing to do, I think, because sometimes you write loads and it ends up those two characters barely cross paths, but knowing how they feel about each other makes it a lot easier when you're writing to have that kind of woven in subtly into the plot and the background and the way that everyone else interacts around them.
Mhm,
For the plot, normally what I do is I've already said I put it all in a timeline and I write down the arcs that I want to happen within the book. So
mhm,
within Top and Tail, for example, there's Ash's sexuality arc,
mhm,
there's the arc with his parents, there's the arc with Linda.
mhm,
So I try and put them all together and figure out how I can get these arcs connected and how they make a difference to each other, basically. Try
mhm,
and weave it all together and make sure I've got most of the loose ends tied up.
mhm. Um, I don't know what I do because, like I said, I've been writing since I've had these ideas in my head since I was 10. So like, I already know like what these characters do and how this affects this, and this character turned in reborn into this character, and like, so I would really have to, like, take a new fresh idea in my head and plan that out. But until I do that, I can't say I agree or disagree. Um,
Preston,
go ahead.
so do you mainly have, are these the characters that you've had in your head since childhood?
Yes. Um, uh,
Cool.
okay, so like I have this notebook, well, notebooks, and they literally have some my terrible handwriting when I was younger. And they just have literal the characters, and what I think they would be like, and if this person was in real life, what would they do? How would I react to them? Because if you consider how would you react to them, it's it's good because it would be more like how like your audience would react to them rather than other characters, and
Mhm.
like things like that. And I have this little notebook and I really like it. Notebooks, and these notebooks literally, it's like 40 or 50 books in in those notebooks, and those are the books that I want to write because they, even to this day, they still interest me and I still want to write them. So now that I finally have time on my hands, I can sit down and write them. So I guess when 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old me decided and started planning out how these books affect each other, and this one builds off of this one, and this order and this order, I guess I can say that the ideas kind of flow themselves. Like, you know how you, when we're inspired when we're writing, we can just write
Mhm.
that whole chapter right there. But when we're not as inspired, we have to like, let's write this paragraph and then go take a break and do that. I guess I was just so inspired at that point that it just all clicked together. Hmm.
That just happens though. Like you've been in the middle of something, you have like the proverbial light bulb moment.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess that's what happened to me. So, Thanks. Thanks, 10-year-old me. Um, what is one thing that changed between the first draft and your final draft of your novel? And why did you change it?
Two changes that come to mind actually. The first one was there was an additional plot
Mm-hmm.
about Ash and Jay sitting their exams. So in Scotland, it's not the same education system as England, but it's quite similar. And you know how they've got GCSEs? We at the time had a thing called standard grades. It's now called something else. I was the last year to do them because I'm old now. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, they were setting their national or their standard grades, and your standard grades are not a huge deal, but they're quite important because you need to pass all them to then sit the next set of exams. And
Mm-hmm.
those next set of exams determine what you can do at university. So I had a whole plot about how G's mum being in hospital was going to affect that and having to balance your studies with that kind of personal family commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just getting too complicated and tangled, and it was too difficult to interweave coherently, especially because it was a much more J-centric plot and it was in first person.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up having to cut it,
Okay.
and that leads into the second change. Because I cut that plot, I moved the timeline from after Christmas, which is when you would be sitting your exams, you'd be sitting them kind of in May, June, and I moved it to before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot to change the school year that Ash and Jay would be in.
Oh,
So
I,
there's a slight mistake there.
mm-hmm.
They should actually be in fifth year.
Well, I didn't notice, but to be
It's
fair, I am
fine.
from America, to be fair. So I don't know if that was just because, I didn't know about this. Um,
That's what I was relying on. See, when I realised, I was like, oh, most people who read it in America, and it'll probably be fine.
um, well, I know my book is not out because I'm working on the final draft now. But one thing that changed for me would be, let's see. Okay, so it went from first person to third person, and that was because I'm trying to think how to say this without giving away everything. Um, well, okay, so it's a dual narrative. So two characters have narratives, and initially they both had I verbs. Not I verbs. They both had I pronouns. Right, and I went from first person to third person because this, even though they're the protagonists, this book wasn't about them. Um, yeah, and that's all I'm gonna say on that because if I say anything else, I'm kind of gonna give it away. Cause I was,
Keep it mysterious.
yeah, cause I was with my friend and we were just talking on the phone and she didn't ask me anything. I was just explaining to her why I changed it from third person to first person, and I let it slip like the exact reason, like, and that spoiled
No.
the whole book. And
No.
I don't want to do that again. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. So okay. So what is the main message you wanted to address in Top and Tail?
When I wrote it, I think the message was almost kind of subconscious. Um, and because I was going through so many of the same things as the protagonist, uh, at the end, I think the final line is, like, we're gonna be okay.
I really got
And
that.
yeah, that was what I think I needed to hear. Um,
Hmm.
that when you're gonna get through all this confusing and difficult times in your life, and it is gonna be okay.
Hmm.
So I think just that didn't intend that to be the message when I sat down and tried to write it, but I think my subconscious just needed to
Just
hear it,
push
and
that
that
in.
came through in the book. Yeah.
That happened to me. Thanks. You just gave me something less spoily to say about my book. Yes, that exact thing happened to me where I was reviewing the first draft, and subconsciously I kept putting on this message. So the main message I wanted to get across with the book is that pain is necessary in not pain as in that type of pain. Pain as in sadness, grief, depression. And the main message I wanted to get across with that book is that pain is a good thing, because without pain we would never truly appreciate what we have. But I kept subconsciously pushing a different message onto the book, which I can't say, but eventually I just gave in and literally just was like, you know what, tag along, and had to restructure the plot around that as well. And um, I really, I really got the we're going to be okay, because I honestly, wholeheartedly, when I was reading this, did not think Jay's mother was going to die. Like, I really didn't, because I don't. Most books that I read, not most books, but books that I recently read around your book, is
Mhm.
they were just all so happy, like so happy ending, protagonist solves everything, love prevails. I don't have nothing
Yeah.
wrong with those books. It's just I kept reading them over and over, so I was kind of, getting tired of it. I wanted something different. So when Jay's mother actually died, I felt that. I literally cried in my bed over there. I
Oh,
remember that. Uh,
oh, I would apologise, but that was my intention. Sorry.
like it, cause and then I didn't expect it. I feel like it would have been better if I expected, but I didn't. So I just was, and then I was so like, even though they're characters, I in that moment thought they were so real. I was just like, how is he going? I'm going through this, and this is not my mother. How is Jay? How is Jay going to go through this? Like, what is he going to do? And the ending, uh, like the bittersweet ending, really, it really resonated with me, because it's not, they're going to be okay. Like, it feels like that. They're going to be okay, even though things has happened to them in the past, and they know that life is not always, I don't know, rainbows. Um, it they're going to get through it, and they know that. So I really felt that message, and that's exactly what I needed at the time, because I can tell you, school is not no joke. Yeah. So now I want to ask you, did you think you were successful in portraying that message? Uh,
Yeah, I do like to think so.
mhm,
Um, One of the another cool things about Wattpad is the fact that you're connected directly to all the readers that
mhm,
are reading your stuff. I've published stuff in other ways where you don't get that kind of direct feedback. It gets filtered through, review sites and other things like that.
mhm,
With Wattpad, you get the raw, visceral reaction of your readers, and that's really nice. And that, to me, also really helped me because I'm writing this because I want to hear that it's going to be okay, and I need to believe that I'm going to be okay. And getting so many comments and messages from other readers who were in a similar situation and felt that from the book
mhm.
made it a lot easier to believe it.
Mm. Oh, well, you were successful in my eyes, if that means anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
um, okay, so our next thing is, um, when did you first call yourself a writer?
I think going back to what I was saying earlier, I
Mhm,
think if someone asked me, "Are you a writer?" I would say yes. But I normally don't identify myself with it as like the first thing.
mhm,
I did a stint. I was a copywriter for a while. So like, you know how when you go into a website and there's descriptions for like clothes and hotels and things like
mhm,
that. I wrote a lot of that, and people would talk to you and be like, "Oh, you're a writer. What do you write?" And you'd be like, "Oh, copy content rather than
mhm,
fiction and stuff like that." And I think I wanted to kind of like disassociate myself from being known for that kind of thing for a while. So I stopped
mhm,
kind of saying I'm a writer and started saying I like to write. I like to write book,
mhm,
that kind of thing. But probably before that, when I did that professionally, it was like yourself. I was writing from when I was really, really wee. I used to like write books and then like print them
Mhm.
out and then staple them together between coloured paper so that it was like a novel. I would take it into school and get my teacher to write a review on the back.
What I did was uh what I did was literally, instead of actually like printing it out, I would just literally write the whole, not the novel, but like things, scenes, and lines from the novel, and write that down on a piece of paper. And I don't, I didn't necessarily show anyone because at this, I younger me wanted to be a writer, but he also wanted to be something else. And older me now, he knows he wants to be a psychiatrist. So at first, it wasn't like I knew I wanted to write these books, but now that I'm older, I know that I not only want to write these books, I want to share them with people because previous me didn't feel like he just wanted to write them. He didn't he didn't care if people saw them. He in fact didn't want people to see them. But I feel like yeah, in the beginning, I I never really was like I am a writer to people, even though that's what I wanted to be. I never really thought of myself as that. And I wonder, I don't know where that comes from, but I'm, I don't know. I don't actually know where that, like, why that happened. And I don't know what to say about that. So, next question. um,
I think with the term writer, a lot of times people are like fear to. Sorry, that's a pure Scottish word. People are like um afraid to take it on because quite often when you think writer, you think published author, like
mhm,
someone of the fame of like Stephen King or whatever.
mhm,
And a lot of what it entails puts a lot of pressure on you. I think
mhm,
people don't think of it as I'm a writer, someone who writes. You
mhm.
think of all the entrappings that it has professionally, which is a shame, really, because as we discussed before, we're all writers.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely see that. So let's move on to the next question. Um, I want to know what. No, I want to know why does being an author matter to you?
I think being an author and writing books is something that I've just always felt the need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great if I could do this as my career and make money off it and just spend all my time writing books. But I have another career that's more stable
Uh-huh.
and traditional and that sort of thing. And I still write, even though I've got that,
Uh-huh.
because there's a kind of need to do it. You want to get your thoughts out of your head, you want to explore things and work through things through the lens of different characters. And more than that, you also want to experience things that you maybe necessarily wouldn't experience in your life. You're saying earlier you've not necessarily been kidnapped, but you've experienced it through your writing
Uh-huh.
and through another character. That's
Uh-huh.
cool. And I also like the connection that you have with other people when you write, you read their writing and they read your writing. I
Uh-huh.
think it's quite, you expose yourself when you write. Um, Whether you want to or not, you do always kind of, there's always a bit of yourself in what you put out there. And it's really gratifying and you can form a really intimate bond with people
Uh-huh.
when you shared that. I think that's really awesome. I would really miss doing, sharing my writing and
Uh-huh.
experiences doing if I wasn't an author as well.
Yep, I completely understand because I feel like being an author or writer or whatever you may call it, it's a part of me. Like even if I like sometimes I hate it that it's a part of me because
Oh,
sometimes
of course.
because sometimes you're just like I want to drop everything right now and write. And
Yep, completely.
life is not like that. You can't just
No,
drop everything. Um
no.
and some and a big part of writing for me too is the connections I make. Like I'm here literally talking about writing. Um Yeah. So I just yeah, I feel like if I just suddenly stop writing or being an author, I would lose a big part of myself.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of like a core part of you, doesn't it?
Mm, like it's just like you like it's yeah definitely a core part of you. It's not like your entire identity, but like it's definitely something like you wouldn't be like, oh, I can't write anymore. I can't live anymore. It's it. I just think it's like you know, how multiple things add up to your personality, and if one of those
Yeah,
disappears, you're not going to be like completely helpless. It's just you're not going to be you. Let's see. Um. So I want to know what changed about your writing process from your first book to one of your next books or your current work in progress, if you have one.
okay. So I mean, right, obviously, right away, the first big one was plotting much more. I got much more into pre-planning everything because there are a couple of mistakes in Top and Tail and things that I'd maybe changed later on that the earlier chapters had already been published, so I couldn't go back and change without people seeing them.
Uh-huh.
So I got a lot more kind of how would you say? Yeah, I got a lot more pressed about the detail, paid a lot more attention to that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I started because I'd had success with Ash and writing someone who was very different from me. I
Uh-huh.
started to write a much broader range of characters, and I think my characters went from being a generic, sarcastic teenager to much more like their own people.
Uh-huh.
And I write a lot more characters who are very different from me now. I've got very shy characters.
Uh-huh.
Characters are like a lot more introverted, a lot more extroverted.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm probably going to definitely like I hope we have a good experience today so that I'm probably going to read another one of your books and you know, and if I like it, which I probably will, um I would love to have you back here cuz it's just you're a very inspiring person, okay? That's what I'm going to say.
I would love to be back. I'd really love just to talk about writing and books. I really like meta. So
Okay, so let me ask you um can you give me some insight on your two protagonists' mindset as they go through their like any problem that they have?
mm, okay. So I think one of the things that people associate with Jay is that he's a worrier. He's quite a shy, retiring person.
Uh-huh.
But I actually think Ash is a bigger worrier. He just worries in a different way. Because if, like, when you listen to Ash talk, because obviously the book's in first person, so we're privy to a lot of his kind of like inner. Um, he's always thinking of the worst case scenario. Like, he's always thinking about how his mum and dad are going to be completely disappointed in him with his sexuality. He's always really worried that when they go out on the date, that people are going to be looking at them weird.
Uh-huh.
When him and Jay have a bit of a fallout, he's really worried that he's just blown it forever. There's no chance of redemption for him. Whereas Jay, I think, is actually a bit more calm and collected with that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, when he wants something, he doesn't really have a problem with kind of letting you know if it's something he really wants.
Uh-huh.
Like, he was the one who kind of went in, did the first kiss. He's got no problem being assertive with Lewis at the start when Lewis is trying to kind of poach him to be his pal.
Uh-huh.
So I think Jay probably approaches things a bit more methodically than Ash, whereas Ash kind of gets swept up by his emotions when he's dealing with problems. But, he's 15, so that's kind of just
Uh-huh.
that's what being 15 is like, isn't it?
Do me recalculating my brain. Okay. Um. Okay. So I want to know if you want to share. Do you have any unfinished projects, books, anything like that? Like maybe a synopsis, maybe. And do you ever plan on finishing them?
Yeah, I've got a few. So my current work in progress that's on Wattpad, I think I've got two. I've
Mm-hmm.
got 448 Sunrise, which is a sequel to 0800 Hours.
Uh-huh.
And it's about, I think I will keep the synopsis for that one because if you've not read the first one, it's a huge spoiler for the ending. But it's a science fiction post dystopian. Actually, it's about a pandemic. Um, but I
Yeah.
wrote that before
Okay.
all of COVID kicked off. I know. If I'd known, I probably would have changed quite a few things about it. But here we are. The other book that I've got on Wattpad is called No One Likes Monday.
Yeah, I
And
saw
it's
that
about
one.
a character called Monday Starzynsky, who is a Polish immigrant in the UK. And this one, just because I'm older now, I tend to write about slightly older characters, and it's more about kind of young adult or new adult coming of age as opposed to teen fiction,
Uh-huh.
kind of dealing with the problems of not feeling like an adult when you've been thrust into an adult role, the responsibilities of it, not really knowing what do you do with your life, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Off Wattpad, I've got a couple as well. I've got a fantasy book in the works actually. I've never posted fantasy on my account, so I hope people are interested.
I am me raising my hand now.
That one's about a boy who dies, and the Grim Reaper that he meets immediately brings him back to life because he wasn't scheduled to die. And there's been a lot of people who have been dying off of schedule, and he's the first one that the Grim Reaper's caught.
Mm-hmm.
So they're now going to investigate what's happening in the kind of underworld to cause this.
Interesting. Very interesting. I like that. Title? Could we know the title perhaps?
The working title is And They Say Romance is Dead.
Wow. Interesting. Mm, I'll be there. Um, let us see. Okay. So I really like your cover. I don't know why I didn't remember that, but your cover and
Okay.
you're welcome. And I feel like that's a major part where that's a major part of a book. Like your cover is the thing that makes people want to read your book. If but if you had a bad cover, they're not going to read your synopsis. Therefore, they're not going to get in your book. So I
Yeah.
really was drawn to your cover. Um, and I want to know like why did you decide on this cover and what was your process of making this cover?
So with the top and tail cover, I actually drew that one.
Really?
Um,
Like,
and it's kind of reminiscent of the covers of books that I liked growing up. When I read teen fiction and contemporary fiction and stuff like that, kind of John Green, those kind of authors, it's all illustrated covers. And I like that. I like the simplicity of illustrated covers as well, because it lets you kind of project the finer details of what you imagine a character to look like in your head.
mhm,
I prefer that to having a photograph on the
mhm,
cover that's kind of definitive. For top and tail, I thought I should spend a lot of time sitting on that bed. It's very important, to their
yeah.
relationship because they spend a lot of time and they have really kind of soul bearing conversations when they're in that position. So I thought that representing that on the cover would be a good way to kind of show how their relationship develops throughout the book.
Mhm. Well, I did not expect you to actually draw that. You draw really well. I can't
Oh,
draw.
no, I used a reference,
Oh.
um, but I quite like Ash's posture's a bit vulnerable. He's
Mhm,
kind of drawn into himself, and Jay's a wee bit more relaxed, a wee bit more open.
mhm. Nope, it worked. Okay, so our next question will be how how do you balance your personal life and your writing life, I guess?
Oh, with great difficulty. It's been easy. That's one of the things that has been easier with COVID because you're spending a lot more time,
At
in
home.
your house.
Hmm.
In Scotland, in particular, we're on like full lockdown. My area just now, like nothing's open apart from supermarkets and essential services, and it's been that way for quite a while.
Mhm.
Before that, I was really just writing any chance I could get. When I was going to uni full time, I used to have a notebook in my bag, and whenever we had a spare minute, like I was on the bus to campus, I would be writing. Or if we were in between two lectures and we were waiting for a lecturer to show up, I should have been going over my engineering notes, but I was writing.
Mhm.
So it was just when you're really busy like that, it was just squeezing out a bit of time whenever you could. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes
Mhm.
there. It all adds up.
Mhm. Okay. um, I don't have anything to add. I'm I'm just taking it all in. Okay, let us move on to the next question then. Um, well, I guess I can add something. So I just, I keep agreeing with you. I don't really have nothing to add to
We just
that
have too
because,
much in common.
um, yeah, like it's difficult for me too because like you have them papers, them literal 10-page, 13
Hmm.
page, 6-page papers, and it's very tiring. Like, but you still have this like part of you that it's just like I want to write. Get up right now. I don't care if you're exhausted. Go write.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just a very similar experience for me too. Like I'm doing better because like COVID, I stay home more, and I don't have to go get on a bus, go drive here, go this place. Um, so I have a lot more time to just have a schedule. But like when I'm out there in the real world, it's more improvising because you can't predict life.
And it's much harder as well. Like, see, once you've left like high school and you've gone from having a day that had a really rigorous structure to who knows what's going to happen.
I don't know if you did, but I'm curious if you did. How did you market Top and Tail?
So this is a kind of funny one because when I wrote Top and Tail, there was
Uh-huh.
no way to make money on Wattpad.
Uh-huh.
So the marketing aspect of it wasn't as big. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I think I remember like the biggest book at the time that I remember had like 12 million reads, and that
Uh-huh.
was huge.
Uh-huh.
Whereas now, you can scroll through the hot list and there's people who've got hundreds of millions of reads.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also at the time we had categories, and they were you had to put your book in two categories,
Uh-huh.
um, and the tag search was rubbish. It was absolutely rubbish.
Uh-huh.
So you would mostly search by title and category. One of the
Uh-huh.
things that I did that I think when you see Top and Tail, you can see the age of the book is in the title. It's got like boy x boy and slash,
Yeah.
and it's because the search algorithm would people would search those were the words people would search for if they were looking for LGBT fiction,
Uh-huh.
and the search algorithm would push the title to the top rather than the tags. It almost completely ignored the tags from my
Uh-huh.
memory. So I put those in the title so that people could find it, and also to
Uh-huh.
keep away the people who wouldn't read LGBT fiction, the
Yes.
trolls and stuff. Because
Yeah.
you know what it's like.
Yes, I do. Hmm. I
I
still
also
have.
have posted in forums as well.
Hmm, I'm gonna try that when my book comes out and post them in forums because I am part of quite a few. But yes, I do absolutely know what it's like to write queer media and to have that one person over there that's
Mm-hmm.
like you. I gave you so many hints of what this bad. How did you get here? Like it's
Oh,
literally boy
honestly,
ex boy in the title.
honestly, right? There'd be people, at the time when I was writing, when I was publishing it, I was getting like 6 comments a chapter, 7 comments a chapter,
Mhm.
and you would sometimes get people who would get like 7 chapters in and be like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
they're gay," and you're
Yes.
like,
Like.
"What do you mean? Wait a minute? Like,
Like
I've
how did
made it
you get
explicitly
here?
clear." How do you read so many chapters and not recognize
Yes.
like the
Mhm.
internal like queer struggle when you're kind of
Mhm.
and
And
I know
then
Ash is like in denial for like the first 9 chapters or so, but like,
it's
come on.
yeah, and then the title. Come on, did you not read the title? Yeah, that happens a lot to me too. But also the thing that I have very strong opinions on that. Like, okay, like you don't want to read that. I'm not going to force you to read that. But why are you coming in my comment section disrespecting my existence because you clicked on this book? I did not force you to do this.
You know, luckily, the vast majority of people I've had on Wattpad have been really nice and really supportive, and they usually drown out all of that sort of stuff before I get a
Mm-hmm.
chance to see it now. But yeah, at the time, I remember when I added that to the title, like, okay, that will push it up in the search algorithm and clearly market it to the people who want to read it, and
Mm-hmm.
clearly keep away the people who don't. Nah, doesn't work like that.
You still have one or two people that just slip through the cracks. Like, okay.
Yep.
How did you select the name of your characters?
I actually have a big list of possible character names going all
Really?
the time. Yeah, anytime I come across a name that's a bit unusual or a name that I like, I add it to this list. And then when it's time to name a character, I pull out the list of all the names that I like
Hmm.
and I try and find one that kind of fits, the character's background and ethnicity, and
Hmm.
also it is symbolic if possible. So with like No One Likes Monday, for example, that I don't think I'd seen that used as a name somewhere because Monday's a really abstract word to
Hmm.
use as a name. But I thought I really liked it because this character is someone who feels really that kind of nobody cares about them or likes
Hmm.
them.
And that really
And it's a
ties
bit,
into Monday because that's the
yeah,
common phrase. Like,
that one hits you over the head like a hammer. That symbolism,
hmm
but
like no one likes Monday. Well, I beg to differ. My week don't. My week does start on a Monday. That's interesting. But um, it. I actually like Monday for some reason. Particularly, I'm not trying to be like that one person that's like not like other boys. I hate that trope. But Um, Monday, it's really I like it because it's a restart. Like,
hey,
okay, Sunday and Saturday I did this, and that was a part of what I had to do last week. But Monday, it's new. It's not necessarily new. I might be doing the same thing, but it's a new week.
yeah, new start, fresh start, can discard whatever was stressed or hanging over you from the old week.
Like that's why I like Monday. I like Sunday, Saturday, and Friday. Every other day is just lumped in with the other ones.
Yeah,
I like
just bleed
Sunday.
together.
I like Sunday because that's the end of the week. Like, like after this day, guess what? New week, time to start over all my problems. I like Saturday because that's the day where I write the most, I edit the
Yeah,
most for
me
my
too.
podcast, and usually I record on my podcast for Saturdays. But I get more time, so I can do that in a week now, in weekdays. Um, for me, I don't necessarily have a list, but I have in my notebooks, I have the meaning of names in it, and I every character in my book has a name that means something, and I don't know. That's just me. Like I can't have a character without having that name means something to them. Like, it's like one of my books is called Losing Myself, and Solum literally means alone, and that's what he feels like in most of his book. So like, I just I just do that, and then like even if it don't have a like specific meaning, if you like put in what does Solum mean, sometimes it's different languages, but in English, sometimes the fact that they don't have a meaning to their name is actually the meaning of the name. Like
Oh, I
every
love
other
that.
character, like every other character has a meaning, but this one person don't. So obviously, it's it's a reason why they don't, because it goes along with their character. Um, Even side characters sometimes get meanings to their name. And the only time I really don't give side characters a meaning to their name is just if they pop up, like like somebody at the gas station. I just gas attendant.
A
That's
wee
their name.
random one off. Yeah.
Yeah, but if they're like actually coming into the story a couple of times, they get a meaning to their name.
It's interesting. Do you know, I actually have a character who in 0800 Hours he's called Cameron.
Mhm.
and Cameron in Gaelic in Scotland means crooked nose.
Mhm.
He does not have a crooked nose, so he's raging about the meaning.
Mhm. Let's see. So if you didn't write, if you could not write for some reason, um, what what would you do with that spare time?
Oof. Um, I do have a lot of artsy hobbies, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um, so I think I would probably try and like channel the creative energy into something else. I
Mhm.
write a lot of music,
Really?
so when you write music, you can kind of tell a story with that as well,
Yes.
albeit not as overt as when you're writing a book, but you can have the emotional bits, you can have peaks and troughs, you can have exciting and all that sort of thing. So I think I would probably spend more time composing.
Hmm. For me personally, I love music. It really helps me write. But for me, I would actually try to draw. I can't
Yeah.
draw, but I would try. Yeah, because I really like what I notice is it's not just books that I like. I just like anything that tells a story, and I read a lot of manga because of that.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, yeah. So like I would try to instead of writing books with words, I would try to draw pictures to make up for that.
Yeah. Tell the story in another way.
hmm Um. Okay. So this is a bit of a personal question, but what characters in your books are most similar to you or other people you know, and how has this affected you writing them?
Ah, okay. So this is another thing that I do in the little notebook that comes with me everywhere.
Mm,
See if someone has an interesting quirk or an interesting story, I write it down. And I'm
mm,
like, ah, I'll use that for someone later.
mm,
So for example, there's I know people who um know every flag in the world,
really?
and that's like their special talent. And I was like, oh, that's such a like interesting quirk for a
Uh-huh.
character to have. I'll write that down.
You're.
Um, there's bits from like uh, where characters will have professions that I've worked in or the people I know have worked in.
Mhm,
Just because that's easier to fill out realistically if you know a wee bit about it than it is to give them a job that I don't really have any exposure to, like
mhm,
don't know, skydiving instructor, for example. I don't really know anything about that, but I know a lot more about being a salesman or a parcel sorter or, other things like that.
mhm.
I think Ash
Uh-oh.
is probably the most similar to me
Uh-huh.
because that book was in the first person and it was the first one that I'd written where I was trying out a character who was different, which sounds kind of contradictory, but you still end up inadvertently putting in parts of your personality into
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That makes sense.
I was quite like, because we were going through similar things, you
Mhm.
do just end up kind of subconsciously embedding bits of you. I'm quite sarcastic, but I'm nowhere near as sarcastic as Ash. Um, there's a lot of times that I would be writing something, I'd be like, "Oh my god, I would die if I said that out loud."
Hmm.
But we do have other things that in common, and how we approach things. Yes, I think that happens in all of the protagonists, but there's bits of you in all of them. It's just different bits.
So what not what? How long does it actually take you to write a book?
So now it takes me a lot longer because I've got, like other responsibilities, the joys of adulthood.
Mhm.
I wrote Top and Tail from July 2011 to October 2011,
That's actually really quick.
and I have never batted out anything that quickly again.
uh, I really can't do that. That's yeah, and it's such a good book. Oh my god.
I
You
don't know
know,
how the hell I did that, to be honest.
that really this keeps happening to me. Like the previously Nicholas, he wrote his first book and it was Heartbeat. And I just how do you do that? Like how like oh wow. How do you I just that breaks my mind. Just
Oh
like if
no, I
someone,
don't know what I was doing 10 years ago, but phew,
mm,
I wish I could get that back.
and then like when I be hearing stories and authors that write books in a whole books in months, like I just that really confuses me. Like how?
Nah, now it takes me much closer to the year mark or a year and a couple of months to be honest. By the time I've like combed through it and I'm satisfied with the final draft. And
Mm, like us. Okay, so if you could meet one of your characters, what would you say to them?
to be honest, I think I would most like to meet Ash
Mhm.
from top and tail. Because he's the protagonist. Actually, I think I would like to meet the protagonist from all of my books. Because, they're the protagonist because they're my favourite character.
I would like to personally, if we're
Yeah,
talking
and I
about my
like
books,
them.
I would like to meet the villainess. I don't know why.
Oh, would you?
Yes, because my villainess, he's not really a villain. It's just he knows too much.
Oh. What would I say? I think, to be honest, with Ash, I think he just needs someone to, like, give him a hug,
Mhm,
tell him it's alright, he's
mhm,
gonna be fine, he can do it, the way you are is fine.
that's what I would if I was to be Ash. That's what I would say. Like
Yeah, I think that's what he needs.
like life goes on. You're gonna be okay. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me personally, my books, the protagonist is interesting, but the villain in this particular book is the protagonist. I don't. Can I say that? Oh my god, I'm getting spoily. So let me just keep going. uh, if okay, so what is something unique only to your writing style?
Fun, isn't it? Um, I like to think that my characters are quite kind of localized. You know what I mean? I noticed on this is more kind of answering it from the perspective of on Wattpad, but on Wattpad, almost everything is written like in set in the States. And when I
Hmm.
started writing on my first account, I set my books in the States as well because it kind of felt like you had to
Hmm.
get people to pick it up and read it and be familiar with it. Um, but I think part of the reason maybe Top and Tail picked up a lot of interest is because it was set somewhere else and the characters had a kind of unique way of speaking.
Hmm.
And I think Ash is someone who's quite an interesting character to write from that point of view because he quite often says something that he doesn't mean to hide how he really feels.
Hmm.
So if you just look at the things he says, you probably get a different impression of how he actually feels when
Yeah.
you look at his body language or the way he reacts to other things.
Hmm. I'm actually trying to write a character similar to that, but instead of meaning like the opposite, what if he say he just copes with hiding his emotions by making deals because he feel like
Um,
a deal is strictly business. It's not business, but a deal is you don't have to put your emotions into a deal. It's just this person said this person said this. You have to do with this person. Like it's no room for wigglement. You don't. If you have a deal, it's just a deal. You just gotta go through with what you have to go through. Like,
Makes it professional, removes the kind of emotional vulnerability.
like he doesn't like that, so he copes with deals. Like, oh, okay, let's make this deal, and the deals are often one sided, and that's why I try to make it seem like even though he likes to remove him emotionally, him remove himself from the situation, he also is like a very emotional person because his deals always favor that person. It doesn't never favor himself. It's almost always completely one sided. Like he makes a deal so many times in the book, and it's like, what do you get out of this?
Hey, what you doing?
But I feel like that is just he gets the actual not having to be openly vulnerable. That's what he gets out of the deal, even though it's not in his favor. Okay,
Interesting. I like that.
thanks. So, if you were to make a spin-off with one of your side characters, which side character
Um,
would it be?
Ah, okay. So the most commonly requested one is, of course, a side story with Lee and Lewis and how they get together and their relationship beforehand. Because obviously, by the time they enter the storyline, there's obviously been a bit of like, will they, won't they, on their part that
Mm-hmm.
Ash hasn't been privy to, so it's not in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't think they're who I would pick. I think I would be more interested in writing about um
I
kind of
w- I would
Jay
want to see.
beforehand.
I
Yeah,
actually I wanted to see a side story with Jay's mom and how his childhood was. That's what I wanted to see.
that's
But
actually what I think I would like to write more because his dad's quite a mysterious character, and
hmm
for Jay to end up so kind of like shy and I think that
hmm
would be
that's that I
more
really wanted
fun.
to see Jay's childhood and his mother, how she was. Like I just
Yeah,
really wanted to see that.
yeah,
Uh,
because we don't really get to see a lot of that. Because obviously you're from
mhm.
Ash's perspective, so you're
Yeah,
kind of limited to what he
he
physically
feels.
sees. He
Yeah.
only sees Linda when she's ill. I think it would be cool
hmm
to explore, what she was like beforehand, because you know that she was a strong swimmer, and she was friends with
hmm
Ash and Jay's Ash's mum and dad. Sorry,
hmm
and then she's got her whole romance that didn't work out with Jay's dad. I think that would be a more up the alley of what I would like to write.
Yeah, I would love to see that. What was your hardest scene to write in Top and Tail?
Oh, um, Linda's death.
I guessed
Ha-
it.
yeah. So, the person in my family that had inspired that plotline
Mhm.
died 1 month after I posted the final chapter, and
I'm,
we.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. It happens.
Yeah, that is
It's what the
true.
book's about, I suppose. But because we kind of knew that was coming, and I naturally the book got to that point around that time that was really difficult to write, and I
Mm,
particularly the scene where Ash, who's someone who's kind of fallen away from his religion,
mhm,
turns back to it to get comfort at that one moment.
mhm,
That went through a lot of rewrites because it's such a kind of personal, controversial thing. Religion, I was never going to be able to write a version of that scene that makes everyone happy.
that's true.
And even now, that particular scene, there's people who despise it. There's people who absolutely hate it. There's people who are crying because they felt related so much. So there was quite. I spent quite a lot of time trying to get something that would make everyone happy before I realised that there's no way to write a
Yeah.
raw emotional scene like that. It's You've just got to put it out.
hmm Personally, when I read the scene of when they were in a hospital chapel and
Mhm.
they prayed, I didn't think of it as. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think of it as something I particularly liked or necessarily disliked. It was more of a I understand moment. Like, this was your mother. These were her beliefs. So I can kind of see like you honoring her by even if you don't necessarily agree with it, just doing that for her because this is your last time to say anything to her.
Yeah, I thought, but that was kind of what that and coming back for the comfort and doing it for Linda as well because that was her belief. That
hmm
was kind of what I was trying to portray. But I think because it's just such a controversial subject and it's a difficult thing to write about and get right.
hmm
Uh, Not everyone took the scene the way I'd intended, so it was difficult from that point of view. And then also when Linda dies, it was just difficult emotionally to write.
hmm
So that chapter was the hard one.
hmm Did you hide any like little secrets in your books that few people found? Um, if not, because I do this, so I just didn't know if anybody else did that. If not, then let's hear about your favorite writing snack or drink.
Um, I actually do
Yes,
this,
yes.
and I don't think anyone has, to my knowledge, I don't think anyone's ever caught on to it. But see, all of my contemporary books, so any book
hmm
that's like in real life,
hmm
they all exist within the same universe, and
Oh,
characters pop up from other books, but
hmm.
they're not necessarily named. They're quite often just someone in passing. So
Interesting.
in Top and Tail, the book that the character's from isn't online anymore because I took it down to edit it. But there was a book that I had up for many years called Growing Up Rough,
Mhm.
and the protagonist's little brother is the blonde boy who cries on the bus,
Int- eh,
the Ash and Jay kind of comfort, or Ash comforts really. So he's just a very like subtle,
yeah, it's very subtle, but like if you
surprise
actually
character.
see that on your own, it's gonna make you see, like it's gonna make the book way more wow. Like that's yeah, that's very.
Yeah, it's more obvious with some other ones, but I'll let I'll keep those quiet just in case anyone else wants to
Yeah.
figure some other ones out. But
Mhm.
I live for the day someone messages me and is like, "Is this character?"
Yeah. Let's see. Um, this is actually our final question, which is strange. But what future projects can we expect? And what are your plans for your work in progress? Like, how long can we expect you here on Wattpad? Like, give us like some things that you plan to do after this podcast.
Well, um, I've been on Wattpad for 10 years. Probably
Uh,
be here for the next 10, at least. Um, I'm working on No One Likes Monday and 448 Sunrise and They Say Romance is Dead, which I've already covered earlier on in the podcast. I've also got a more like adult fiction book that's coming up,
uh-huh,
and it's like, oh, this sounds really boring, but it's accountancy drama. So it's inter-office relationship,
uh-huh,
fraud,
uh-huh,
dealing with relationships as an adult more so than from the kind of young adult and teen perspective.
uh-huh.
I don't want to say too much because I'm still working out the plot
Okay.
kinks on that one, and I'll inevitably spoil it
Me too. I
because I'm
do that.
still, that way when you're at the stage and you've only got the major beats sorted
Hmm.
out. So
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult to tell you like little details that's not going to give you too much because you only know the big details.
yeah, totally. So probably once those are complete, be on the lookout for more kind of adult fiction set in kind of offices and the adult world.
Mhm.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It was really nice talking to you.
So I was actually very nervous. I'm always nervous. Like it's not just her. I'm just always nervous before I meet an author. But you are honestly a really good person, and I
Oh no, you
really
were
love.
so easy to talk to as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I really love your book, and yeah, and I hope you have more success in the future. And I'm most probably definitely going to read your next novel.